Hi, I'm James Shellinglaw, and I'm here with a familiar face, Matthew Upchurch, who is the founder and CEO of Virtuoso. But we're not going to talk about Virtuoso today, because here we are at the World Travel and Tourism Council meeting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It's the largest World Travel and Tourism Council meeting ever, and we're just finished it. So I'm going to get Matthew's impressions of this meeting, what's going to result from it, and you're going to find out about that and a whole lot more on Insider Travel Report. Matthew, great to see you, as always. And we just got done with this meeting in Saudi Arabia, which is really, we've been sort of looking at this for a while. I know I have. I've been very eager to get over here, and then the World Travel and Tourism Council decided to have its meeting. It's actually second summit of the year here. And so here we are. So what was your impression? What was your takeaway from this meeting?
Well, it was really fantastic, because this was the largest gathering of ministers, of ambassadors, the Secretary General of the UNWTO, and then I think we were talking about 250 CEOs here.
Yeah, we had almost every single major hotel chain CEO was here. Right?
No, they were here, obviously, and there's a lot going on. But I think, in all the years that I've been involved in WTTC, it's really wonderful to see how UNWTO representing the public sector, right, and WTTC representing the private sector have really started to collaborate. So the fact that the UNWTO Secretary General was here, all these ministers, all these CEOs together was really powerful, because without private-public collaboration, a lot of our biggest challenges and opportunities are just not going to be met.
Especially over the last 3 years, where actually I think WTTC really did a great job of helping the world get through the travel world get through the pandemic. They did a lot to try to smooth it really was a hard time, because governments were closing borders, and it just was as we heard from Theresa May, who was the British Prime Minister who spoke here. She talked about the problems that we had, right?
Yeah, and then it was amazing to hear former prime ministers, former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, right, talking about all this. So, and you're right. I mean, if we ever had any doubt, it kind of reminds me of some of the other organizations, but WTTC really showed its mettle during the crisis, and I think one of the things that really paid off was the investment that WTTC has made over the years in working with Oxford Economics to really have hardcore data. That was really important. And then the ability to really bridge between governments and policy and use that data in ways that could further our cause was very important.
Well, years ago when we used to go to WTTC meetings and we had a few hundred people, this is a really kind of different event. Now you got government officials with private executives, travel executives, including yourself, and so it's a really different atmosphere. Now, based on your discussions with all of the folks here, what's the general feeling about this year in terms of how the travel industry is doing, 22, and also for next year?
Well, there was a lot of optimism, a lot of reported. Obviously the recovery is uneven. Obviously Asia is still coming back slower at this point, but is coming. But overall, a lot of optimism, and but there was serious discussions about energy issues, recession. Theresa May and the Brits have announced that they are officially in a recession, but right now, one of the things that everybody's reporting is that travel is still holding up pretty well, even with some of those pressures. But I think that, we were looking at it. The one statistic that was amazing here is that now with what we're predicting for the next 10 years, where basically two things that really I walked away with was that the travel and tourism economy will grow at basically almost double the rate of the general global GDP.
I was going to ask you what statistic kind of stuck out, and you're telling me that probably is it.
Yeah. The consensus economic report is at 2.7%. Annualized growth GDP in the general economy, and 4.8 for the travel and tourism economy. Now, The other thing that was really present here that's been so great to see is the role of sustainability, and not sustainability just in decarbonization, which is very important, but also sustainability with regards to cultural and heritage preservation, local economies. One thing that was really cool to see is some of the decoupling of the growth of the travel and tourism GDP with the carbon growth. So we're starting to see a decoupling.
I saw that actually the carbon rates for travel are down, are decreasing a lot more than other things. And that was a big, now that we have sort of gotten through COVID, we can start to refocus on sustainability and really that whole aspect of travel. And that was a lot of what was said here at this conference.
Yeah, and it's not just carbon. It's protection of it's biodiversity. It's local economies. It's diversity and inclusion. One of the things is this industry is actually one of the biggest drivers of creating businesses that are female-owned, minority-owned, et cetera. I mean, it's a huge driver on the social front as well.
No, absolutely, and that is part of being sustainable. Actually, is to have get people jobs and get women to be involved in having jobs and things like that. Now, what should the average travel advisor take away from? What does WTTC? What should it mean to them? I mean, you've been a member of this organization for a while. You go back and you talk to your members. What do you tell them about the importance of WTTC?
Well, I think the thing there is, why did I get involved? I mean, obviously, we all have more to do than hours in a day. But for me, this goes to the interconnectedness of our interdependent. We're so interdependent. And the core goal of WTTC is, quite frankly, to get the level of respect and attention that this industry deserves, so that we can create as frictionless travel as possible, so that we can do our jobs and deliver. So one of the reasons that one of the things that I think every travel advisor should know about is just know the top statistics. I said this when I spoke at Cornell a few years ago to all these bright Cornell students, and I said, look, I know you guys are some of the smartest hospitality people, but do me a favor, and this is what I would say to travel advisors or anybody, if you're in the cruise industry and anybody watching this, learn and first tell your friends, your community, the press, I am first and foremost a member of the global travel and tourism industry, which is 10% of the world's GDP and employs 365 million people, right? So let's all start with that unity of message, because that's what the politicians, that's what the financial press, everybody else understands. And then say, and I'm a travel advisor, or I'm a cruise guy, or I'm
part of this huge industry.
Exactly. And I think that's just something we have to keep driving home.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is an important. It's one of the most important industries in the world, if not the most important.
But we don't always get treated that way.
No, we don't, because people say you're in travel. We think
it's like somehow we're sort of like non-essential.
Well, no, I think we're very essential now. And you've now been a member for how many years now?
I think coming up on almost 14 years.
14 years, but now you're really going to get more involved. I think you just at this. I heard you on stage say you now have a new role at WTTC. Right?
Yes. I'm now taking on the vice chair of the membership of the organization. And WTTC up until now has been primarily some of the largest players in the world. But we have some really good plans for also having the organization be able to help the SME community, because I have felt for a very long time, as well as a couple of other colleagues and people, that in order to fully represent and be the voice of the private sector in travel, we also have to represent the literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of SMEs all around the world. So that when you show up at that city council meeting or parliament or Congress or wherever you're showing up, you're not only XYZ multinational corporation with X millions of employees, but you're also the story of that, small business that started with, 2 push carts, in some little town or did something. And that part of the story is important for telling our overall story, but it's also our responsibility as an organization to help those SMEs have a North Star to connect to a global narrative that makes them feel like they're not alone. This is something that came out of the pandemic. I did it at Virtuoso. WTTC did a great job of having these regularly scheduled conference calls and putting out communication. And job number one is just help me connect to something, kind of that North Star. And then we're going to work on ways for SMEs to have access to some of the products that we used to have. I'll give you an example. We have this thing at WTTC called the EIR. Of course, it's wonky, right? Economic Impact Report about what's happening in the country.
Yeah, WTTC has a tendency to use a lot of acronyms. Yeah.
Well, because it primarily served very large corporations with really sophisticated analytics people, right? But that report in the hands of an SME, you know what it is? It's the appendix document to a bank loan. Right. Because when the bank officer says, well, what are the prospects of tourism in Jamaica or in, wherever you are, or even in the U.S., then there's your appendix document. Right. Oxford Economics, legit statistics. So there's simple little wins like that I'm super excited about.
Yeah. Now, I want to switch the topic a little bit here because we are in Saudi Arabia, which in 2019 sort of opened to the world for the first time. They got new easier visas. People came here and they said it was going to be great. Then we had the pandemic and they kind of got lost. And meanwhile, they've been busy building this infrastructure that is just, jaw-dropping. So what was this is your second, how many times have you been? Second time to Saudi Arabia. What have you found here in terms of what the Saudis are doing?
Well, I had done a lot of research and seen a lot of stuff about what they call their giga projects and all that. I mean, they have, and that, that met all my expectations. But, my fundamental reason for wanting to be here and involved is, my father is, in fact, I'm here and I'm sorry, Terry, I'm missing the 50th anniversary of USTOA because of, my dad was.
Me too.
Right? Because my father was one of the founders of USTOA, but I fundamentally believe that the opening up of borders is a very good thing. And so for me, I think the thing that I have been really moved by now these two times is the fact of my interaction with the Saudi people. I had a very interesting conversation with a young woman from Jeddah who said, I know you guys in the West want to call this the modernization of my country. She goes, but let me show you a picture of my grandmother in 1972. She looked like Grace Kelly. We were a very open society. Right. The Islamic Revolution happened. We know what happened. And now that they're coming back, she goes, so for me as a young Saudi, this is not the modernization, it's the restoration.
Really? That's an interesting point, because I always thought we sort of get sort of bogged down in this is what it is, Saudi Arabia, and it's not that. It really hasn't been for that long, really.
So James, I had the same thing. That one story, and by the way, that only happens when you come to a destination and interact with the people. And every single person that I have said outside this country that a young woman in Jeddah says, I don't see this as a modernization of my country, but a restoration, blew me away. The other thing that blew me away was the fact that this is a large country. It's 34, 35 million people, something like that. It's basically the size of Texas. Well, the vast majority, 80 some odd percent, are Saudis. They're actually, and 70% of the Saudi population are 35 years of age.
They kept repeating that statistic. They said, "Oh my God, they're all so young."
Right, so that is what I personally really, I didn't fully expect to the level of how I've connected guides, drivers, people, the just day-to-day Saudi people that I've met here. And by the way, I asked this question about this whole restoration thing, and they're very open. And by the way, another thing that was amazing is the number of young Saudis like, oh yeah, I went to the University of Kentucky. Oh yeah,
well, we all knew that. I mean, I went to school.
I went to the University of Connecticut, Bridgeport. Oh, I went to the University of Denver. I mean, so that's been refreshing, and for me, it's really been quite an eye opener. And it just
I know. When I flew in. There was a guy, a 30-year-old Saudi, and he's wearing a Columbia University sweatshirt. And I said, he's just coming back from Columbia. He's got his degree in computer engineering, computer science, and he's returning with his family. And we had a nice chat, and it was just because it is true. A lot of Saudis have been educated in the United States.
Well, absolutely. And so, and there are a number, look, first of all, I highly recommend, if you've never heard of WTTC, you never really studied it, and you're a travel advisor, anybody in the industry, just go to their website and check it out. And then this whole thing will be on the streaming thing. There's some incredibly interesting panels that we've had, and I think that what was amazing is the level to which the Saudi sponsors and the government and everybody else was engaged in topics about sustainability, about regenerative travel, about green energies. We all know where the world is going. This is and I think that some of the things that are being done here, Diriyah, NEOM, the Red Sea Project, whatever, because it's a unique situation. You have a plan, you have the resources, right, and you have an alignment. And I actually think that one of the things that I've seen is there are going to be things that will happen here that will then be able to be models.
Well, we were talking about there's a lot of case studies for the future of travel and tourism, because what they're doing here, they're sort of re-engineering through travel and tourism an entire new way of growing.
100%. And very open to sharing that with the world.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, you and I both went to the opening reception at Deary Gate. It's going to be an amazing development. I've been hearing it for a while, but that's only one of the developments here. And it is to come and employ all these younger Saudis eventually in what? Travel and tourism a lot, right?
Absolutely. And they have that, and you come here and you interact with the Saudi population.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had many discussions with all the drivers, everything else, and it's been amazing to really see and they're very excited about us being here.
Yeah, and the speed of change is amazing.
Yeah, that project is what's supposed to be done in 2030, which is mind-boggling.
Yeah, and again, and the speed at which they're doing it, and but again, for me. If I ever had any doubts about the whole thing about, go somewhere and really, you can't really fully understand something until you're there.
Yeah.
And it's like anything else. I mean, it's just like, there's progress, there's movement. But again, I'm very grateful that I decided to come and that I decided to get involved in this. And
you're coming back?
Absolutely. In fact, when I was here last month, I was telling Fahd, who's the head of Saudi Tourism Authority, I said, after being here for 4.5 days and posting and calling my family every night, that probably one of the best compliments you have for a destination is when at the end of that trip, your family says, "When are you bringing us?"
Absolutely, and I got to tell you, there's still a lot of trepidation in the United States about Saudi, and I have friends who said, "No, I wouldn't go there." I said, "Well, you don't know what's here."
Well, and here's the thing: it's like, guys, I mean, if we all have to be able to agree to disagree and on anything. But for me, it's this like, make your own choices, and things are going to develop here, and. The diversity of the people that are coming here from all over the world is incredible, and I think that make your own choices and come at the time or not when you feel is right for you.
Absolutely. Well, Matthew, you and I have been some interesting places over the years. This is one of the most interesting trips that I have done, certainly, and I really was eager to do it. It was one of the reasons I wanted to come to this WTTC. I mean, and you had presentations at Virtuoso Week from the Saudi tourism people, and you just looked at it and you said, I had no idea. Yeah. And so this surprise of being here, and I honestly, I'm not here long enough. I got to come back. So hopefully we'll all come back together one of these days. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to give your thoughts both on WTTC and what's happening here, this transformation in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.